In Yiddish, we call it a yahrzeit, which basically means the anniversary of when the person passed. And in the Zohar, it's called Yom Hilula, which actually means a day of celebration. We'll go into that. Why would it be a day of celebration? But the idea of observing a yahrzeit in the Torah, from a Torah perspective, is very different than observing this kind of an anniversary in the secular world, where it might be much more of just having memories, remembering the person and his life and your association, trying to think of the good times. In Torah, in addition to that, it's actually based on one of the most fundamental pillars of Yiddishkeit, which is the idea that the neshama is a nitzvi, the neshama is eternal, and the neshama continues to exist after its passing. And the definition of passing is just that the neshama separates from the body, but the neshama itself, which is the real identity of the person, continues to exist, but it exists on a higher level. It exists in a higher place, in a spiritual place. And what happens on the day of a yahrzeit is that every year of a yahrzeit, so this year is so many years since the first time, which was 1988, every year the neshama, the soul, rises to a higher spiritual place, which means just like the first time that it happened, what happened? The soul went up to a higher spiritual world, even though while the soul was here in this world, davening, learning, and constantly growing and constantly reaching higher heights. But you can't compare that to the shift that takes place on the day of a yahrzeit. The neshama goes to a totally different world, to a spiritual world. So every year, being that we know, especially those who study Chassidus, that there are infinite spiritual worlds and infinite spiritual levels, so on the day of a yahrzeit, the neshama rises to even a higher place. And that's why there are customs on the day of a yahrzeit where family members say Kaddish, they light a candle, they go to the place where the person is buried, they recite Tillim, all these things that are done, all these actions that we perform, they assist the neshama to go even higher, or that its ascent should be smoother. And actually, it's a two-way road. By doing these things that we do, the Tillim, and the Kaddish, and the candle, it also has a reverse effect, that the neshama, through that, sends blessings and sends spiritual power to the people down here, their families, which are being connected to them, because this connection never ends. And in fact, some of you were here at the beginning of the year when we spoke about this of Tishrei, that there are countless stories of people, of parent or grandparent or someone that came and to them in a dream and told them something or encouraged them to get closer to Yiddishkeit or other information because they're connected. Of course, generally speaking, most people don't merit for that to happen. But even if you don't have a dream, we don't know what kind of strings they're pulling up there. I remember telling you a story about an individual that I met on an airplane, and he identified himself. He saw a siddur, saw the word Arizal, he spoke Hebrew, and he said, my last name is Luria, my name is Oded Luria, and I am a descendant of the Arizal. Very nice. But what I was thinking was that the Arizal was pulling strings up there, that he should meet someone that's going to put on tefillin with him, and not only tefillin, but there was a much longer relationship that went on. In fact, had there not been this connection, unfortunately, he probably wouldn't have even been buried in a Jewish cemetery because of where he was involved. So that means that an ancestor, and everyone could be thinking, who knows, if maybe the fact that I'm here, I had an ancestor, grandfather, great grandfather, or even more, that did that. I remember I was once teaching a class, used to teach a class in Manhattan once a week. And one of the women there, who was very far from everything, walked over and started to talk. Then said, I was told that I come from a certain very great rabbi. I don't know if you ever heard the name, but it's something like the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, Mazel Tov, Baal Shem Tov. I think I heard the name before. But I again didn't doubt that the Baal Shem Tov, if she was a descendant of the Baal Shem Tov, then he was pulling strings. And there's always a connection. So this is what happens by every neshama, but by a tzaddik, and the tzaddikas is much more going on. And this is based on what it says in Gemara. And Rashi brings this in Chumash. You know that in the Torah, everything is precise. Every word is precise. Every letter is precise. And even the location where this pasuk is written or that pasuk is written is also precise. So very often the Gemara discusses why is this written next to that. So one of the things are the story of Miriam, who was a sister of Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the greatest prophets, one of the greatest tzidkanias, where the Torah talks about her passing. And the next parsha, right after that, begins talking about Para Aduma, which means how one of the things that brings atonement more than anything else is the red heifer. Why does the Torah put the two things together? And the Gemara says, because just like the red heifer brings atonement, when a tzaddikus, like Miriam or a tzaddik, passes, then it brings atonement to the entire generation. What is the connection? How does that bring atonement? So briefly, the Alter Rebbe explains this in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe says, of course, we know that a tzaddik has an impact on the entire generation and the whole world. But everything that tzaddik does, besides the fact that he's fulfilling and observing Hashem's mitzvahs and learning Hashem's Torah, but it says in Tanya, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, that when we do Torah and mitzvahs, the Torah mitzvahs go up. That's the term that's used. It flies up to Hashem. It has wings. The wings are love and fear of Hashem. But it doesn't mean physical wings or physical flying. It's a metaphoric way of saying that the Torah and the mitzvahs connect to Hashem. They go up. That's what it means, it goes up. Because it's sometimes possible a person could learn Torah and do mitzvahs, and for some reason or other, it doesn't really connect because it wasn't done properly. And this is hinted to us in the story of Yaakov, who had a dream. He saw a ladder, and on the ladder he saw angels going up, and he saw angels going down. What were these angels doing? So it's explained in the Chassidus, the angels carry our mitzvahs up to Hashem, and being that the mitzvahs go up to Hashem, they bring down spiritual and physical blessings. So these are the angels going up, bringing our mitzvahs up, and there are angels going down, bringing our mitzvahs, and not the mitzvahs, but the reward of the mitzvah, how it inspires us spiritually, and the blessings it brings to us physically are coming down as well. However, because the neshama is in a physical body, therefore the neshama is limited. The neshama itself is so much more powerful than we experience it. But because it's in a body, it's confined and the body limits it. So also the Torah and the mitzvahs that we do are limited, and its effect is limited. When the tzaddik's neshama is no longer limited by the body, then all the Torah and all the mitzvahs that he did from the first day of his life until the last day, all the Torah mitzvahs, it's as if they were now released from certain limitations, and they go up much, much higher. And also the result, which is bringing down blessing down here, is so much more, infinitely more than what it was during their lifetime, because now it's not limited. And if it's not limited, it accomplishes so much more. So therefore, when so much, that means on that one day, all the Torah, all the mitzvahs, every single good thing this tzaddik did during his lifetime, all comes together at once on that day, and it has a tremendous impact on the whole world. And that impact is that it brings atonement to all those in the world that need atonement. And every single year, the same thing happens again, because the neshama is even less limited the next year, and less limited the next year. So everything repeats itself, but on a higher level from year to year. That's how it's explained in Chassidus. We don't necessarily feel it or see it, but by us doing and following the customs, like what you did today, Farbrengen, spoke about the Rebbitzin, went to the Eihel, all these things, they create the conduit through which all those brachas are drawn down to us. And of course, the greater the tzaddik, the more things are happening, the greater the brachas, and especially when you're talking about a Rebbitzin, who is the wife of the Nasi Hador, of a tzaddik, who is the tzaddik on a global level, on a huge level. So naturally, the same is also with the Rebbitzin. People ask the question, but what did the Rebbitzin actually do? You know, with the Rebbe, we knew what the Rebbe did. And really, we think we knew what the Rebbe did. Whatever we saw, whatever we knew is a drop, not in the bucket, in the Atlantic Ocean. Somebody once told the previous Rebbe, and it was a Rav, not a Chabad Rav from a different community, and he told the previous Rebbe, you know, I knew your father, who was the Rebbe Rashab. So the previous Rebbe said, you mean you saw him? You didn't know him, you saw him. And there was a story once with Reb Nachum of Chernobyl that the students said to him, we'd like you to show us a hidden tzaddik. So he says, look at me. And they said, but you're not a hidden tzaddik, you're a revealed tzaddik. So he said, well, I'd be in pretty bad shape if I was what you see. In other words, there's much, much more to a tzaddik and to what he does than anything that we're aware of. But at least with the Rebbe, we know the amazing things the Rebbe did around the world. If you have a shlucha that you're associated with, you know what she's doing. She's making classes and talking to people and Shabbos inviting guests and inspiring people. You see what they're doing. What did the Rebbitzin do? And what did all the Rebbitzins do? So it's explained in the Rebbe's Sichos that what the Rebbitzins did was very similar to the Imohis. The Avos and the Imohis. The Avos, meaning Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they are the patriarchs, and we know what they did. The Torah tells us all the different things that Abraham did, and Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and all the things they did to serve Hashem. Imohis, we don't really see that much, a little bit, but hardly anything. But it says in Chassidus that the main function of the Imohis was that everything the Avos did, I think we discussed it in one of the classes, it accomplished amazing things, but the main impact of what they accomplished was more in the spiritual realm. The women, the Imohis, they had the power, and because they were women, they had the capacity to take all the things that they accomplished spiritually, and they're the ones who brought it down to the physical realm. And the Rebbe said the same is with the Rebbitzins, that the Rabbeim did whatever they did, but the Rebbitzins had a very big part in the things that they accomplished. They were the ones that brought all their accomplishments and all the things that they did to bring it down to this physical realm and to have an impact on the physical world. And I guess it's hard to understand, but we can think of it like we just mentioned the hidden tzaddikim. The Gemara says that in every generation, there are at least 36 hidden tzaddikim, which means they're great tzaddikim. The whole world is sustained because of these tzaddikim, but no one has any clue who they are. They look and they act like simple people. There's a story with the Alter Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, he had the manuscript before it was printed, and he called one of his big chassidim, and he said, I want you to go to this and this place and ask the person what his opinion is about the Tanya. Where should he go? He gave him the name of the city. and you should go to the theater and wait till the show is over and everybody leaves. You see somebody cleaning up, walk over to him and ask him for his opinion. A chassid in the theater, he was beside himself, but Alter Rebbe is sending him, so I guess that's where he needs to go. He goes to the theater, and whatever, he probably put his hat over his face and he just let the show roll. And then he hears that everything's ending, people are leaving, and sure enough, there's one person there sweeping the floor. He walks over to him, and he said, the Alter Rebbe asked me to show you these manuscripts. Imagine walking over to a superintendent who's the cleaner of the floors and say, here, these deep mystical writings, I want to hear your opinion about it. He looks at him and says, I can't believe it. He found me over here. Okay, let me see. Yeah, it's good. Tell him that it's good. Who was it? He was a hidden tzaddik. But nobody would have a clue that this is a hidden tzaddik in such a place. So what was he doing on this planet if he was in a theater? So obviously, these are tzaddikim who function on a different level, and they're accomplishing things in a hidden way. And the same is also with the Rebbitzins. They were hidden. Somebody once used the example, he said, which is an interesting point, that we, of course, use our minds to decide what to do, what not to do, how to do. There's another part of our brain that is making a lot of decisions for us. It's called the autonomic brain or the nervous system. And that's the part of the brain which is subconscious. We're not aware of it, but it's making crucial decisions. It's making decisions about the heartbeat, about blood pressure, about circulation of the blood. That's the part of the brain that makes a decision when to release adrenaline and other functions in the body. All the involuntary functions all come from that part of the brain. We have no clue. And it's actually brilliant because everything is done with an amazing precision, exactly when it should be more blood, when there should be less blood. The blood should be sent to these muscles, to those muscles. So there's a lot of things going on. We're not aware of it, but it's happening. And the same is with tzaddikim. And the same is also when we talk about the Rebbitzins. However, one of the things that Rebbe did share with us was in a sikha that the Rebbe gave Tafshin Nun Beis, which was the last time the Rebbe spoke about Shvat. And then the Rebbe said something very, very powerful and something which we didn't hear from the Rebbe before. And he said, just like we learned in Basi Legani, that every one of the others was another stage in bringing the Shekhinah down to this world. And then this generation is the generation where the Shekhinah is going to come down completely. The Rebbe said, in this generation itself, there are also stages. Each stage will be considered like a new era, not just a stage. It's as if it's a new era. What are the three stages? Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Shvat, and Chof Shvat. Yud Shvat is a new era because that's when the Avodah of the previous Rebbe came to its completion. And that day was the day that was the culmination of everything that he did in his lifetime. And not only everything that he did, but this is really the day that was the culmination of all the Avodah, of all the Yidden that did whatever they did throughout all the generations. And this is sort of a certain door closed on Galus. This is what prepared us for the next stage, which is for Mashiach to come. So what's the next stage? The next stage, the Rebbe says, is Yud Aleph Shvat, which is the beginning of the seventh generation. And this is the generation where we're going to witness and experience Mashiach's coming in the most revealed way, in a way that we can see it with our eyes of flesh. So these are two eras that each one is amazing in its own right. And then the Rebbe says there's a third stage, and that's Chof Shvat, the day of passing of the Rebbetzin. And on the surface, like, so what happened? What does that mean? And the Rebbe said it means that this day is the final stage of completing the Avodah of preparing the world for Mashiach. And he explained, and why is it that the final stage is dafka through a woman who's in the Tzidkonius? Why not from due to the Rabbeim? And the Rebbe explained, based on what he always says, that the schus, noshim tzidkonius, it's always in the schus of the women and the righteous women in the times of Mitzrayim and in our generation. That's where the key to Geula is. And therefore, the last and final stage in bringing Mashiach is dafka through a woman who is a tzadekis, and that is the final of these three stages. Nevertheless, we sort of ask ourselves, what did we, is anything that we saw with our eyes that should indicate that this is like a whole new era? In what way is it a whole new era? So one of the things that could be pointed out is that after Shvat, there were tremendous changes in the way the Rebbe conducted himself. And most of these changes, we can't even understand how it's at all connected to Shvat. And I'll give you an example. There were a number of things that the Rebbe never did before, and he started to do it only after Shvat. And there are a number of things that the Rebbe always did, and he stopped doing them after Shvat. To give an example, every Shabbos at a Farbrengen, the Rebbe would teach a Sikh on Rashi. Those of you on level 2, you know, with the Rashi Sikhs, it's not just a Sikh on a Rashi. The Rebbe introduced a whole new approach, how to learn Rashi and how to understand Rashi. And he did this in honor of his mother, Rebbe Tzachana. It was Vav Tishrei. Rebbe Tzachana, after she was nostalgic, in her honor, the Rebbe started to teach and introduce this new way of learning Rashi that was never known before. After Chof Shvat, those sikhs stopped. On the other hand, there was another thing the Rebbe used to teach every Shabbos, which is a sefer of the Rebbe's father, which he did in honor of his father, called Lekut Levi Yitzchak. And he had commentary on the Zohar. And the Rebbe would every Shabbos take something from that and explain what his father is writing. After Chof Shvat, this continued. Every Shabbos, because of the Rebbe's passion for learning Rambam, every Shabbos, when the Rebbe had a Farbrengen, he would talk about the Rambam of the day. After Chof Shvat, stop. When it was the weeks between Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, where we say Pirkei Avos, every Shabbos, when the Rebbe had a Farbrengen, he would talk about the Pirkei Perik and the Mishnah of that week. After Chof Shvat, that also stopped. Maimarim, we all know, we just spoke about it, Yud Shvat, that a maimer is something which is said only by a Rebbe. Farbrengen, other people farbrengen. But a maimer, that's something that only a Rebbe says. And therefore, when the Hasidim wanted so much that the Rebbe should accept leadership, even though the Rebbe did different things, he began to meet with people and give them advice. The Rebbe even took pan from people. The Rebbe was Farbrengen. But the one thing that the Rebbe did not agree to do was to say a maimer. And the Hasidim understood that as long as the Rebbe doesn't say a maimer, that means he's not accepting the position of leadership. And the pleasant shock was on Vasilagani, on Yud Shvat, when the Rebbe started to say a maimer, they knew this is it, the Rebbe is accepting it. And the Rebbe, of course, acknowledged that. So that the Rebbe should stop saying Maimarim was also shocking. And we're talking about even days like Yutas Kislev, Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, no Maimer. Yud Shvat, every year the Rebbe would say a Maimer on Vasilagani, no Maimer. Purim, no Maimer. Rosh Hashanah, no Maimer. What's the connection? We don't understand. But after Chof Shvat, all these things stopped. Another thing which stopped was you'll never see a video of the Rebbe having Farbrengen during the week after Chof Shvat. All the sikhs after Chof Shvat was by the Rebbe standing by his place of davening and speaking from there. No more sitting down by a table and having, saying l'chaim. That never happened again after Chof Shvat. I don't think there was even one exception. A Maimah, there was an exception, but this wasn't even one exception. So here's a list of things that stopped. On the other hand, there was a list of things that the Rebbe did that he never did before. One of them was the fact that he had a Farbrengen every single week. Up until then, the Rebbe only Farbrengen on Shabbos Mevorachim, a Shabbos where we bless the new month, like this Shabbos that's coming up. And unless there was a special date on that Shabbos, it was a Yontif or something, a Hasidic Yontif, the Rebbe would have a Farbrengen. Otherwise, the Farbrengen was only once a month or twice a month. After Chof Shvat, the Rebbe began to Farbrengen every single week. And it's interesting, he did the same by Rebbe and Chana, but only for 1 year. After the year was over, he went back to the previous Seder, which is only once a month, except where there was a Yontif. But by the Rebbetzin, it never stopped. The Rebbe continued to bring every single week. Even though the Rebbe stopped saying Maimorim, but the Rebbe did something which he also hardly ever did before, and that is that Maimorim which were written earlier, which were said earlier, the Rebbe edited them. By other Rebbes, they themselves would write their own Maimer. So we had the Rebbe say the Maimer, and then we had the Rebbe writing the Maimer, so we knew that everything is precise, and Hasidim would study it. But we didn't have, by the Rebbe, a Maimer that's really every word precise, because it was all from our memory, and not the Rebbe himself writing it. So from after Chof Shvat until Chav Zayin Adar, we have more Maimorim that the Rebbe edited and published, which is more than all the years from the beginning of the Rebbe's leadership of this 35 years or so. Another thing which the Rebbe did, all the Rebbes of Chabad usually did not daven Shachris with a minyan. They davened separately because their davening was something different. The Rebbe davened Mincha and Ma'ariv every day with a minyan, but not Shachris. He davened in his room. After Chof Shvat, he started to daven Shachris with a minyan. Where did he daven? He always davened upstairs in the smaller part of 770. After Chof Shvat, he started davening downstairs in the big shul, which number one allowed more people to participate, and number two, women were able to participate. Otherwise, when the Rebbe davened upstairs, there was no place there for women. The Rebbe began to give out dollars. I'm not talking about Sunday, but during the week, every other night, dollars and kuntresim. I brought here something to show you. This is what the Rebbe gave out on Chof Shvat. Gave out a kuntris, and he specifically wanted it to be this kind of color because it was for Rebbetzin. Together with the kuntris, it came in this plastic. In the plastic was a $5 bill, which is in here, $5 bill. And in the plastic was also a piece of honey cake. This is also very unusual. Honey cake is something which the Rebbe would distribute once a year, Erev Yom Kippur, that you should have a sweet year. That year, no one understood until later we saw what happened when the Rebbe had the stroke. Something was going on. The Rebbe distributed honey cake 4 or 5 times. This is one of the times. And then Purim Katan, you have the Maimer we're learning now, Ata Tetzaveh. When he gave out that Maimer also was in a plastic with money, with tzedakah. And why $5? $5 because the 5 in Hebrew is Chamesh. Chamesh is the name of the Rebbetzin. Her name was Chaya Mushka Schneerson. It's Ches Mem Shin. In fact, the Rebbe wrote another sikha that he wanted to have all 3: Torah, Tefillah, Torah, Avoda, and Tzedakah. So the sikh is as Torah. The money to give tzedakah is Gemilas Chasadim. Avoda, which really means korbanos, which is food, that's why he gave the cake, which is connected to that. I could pass it around, you can look at it for a moment. So this idea of giving out money and giving out contrace and giving out this, as we know, we spoke about it many times, that Rebbe didn't just give it out because to help us financially, we shouldn't have to pay money in the store to buy it. The Rebbe gave it to us because this was a way of the Rebbe giving us brachas and keiches, giving out this. And even though there were so many thousands of Hasidim around the world that didn't get it, but through us, it had an influence on the rest of the world. We had the merit, because we lived here, to have the physical article in our hands, whether it was the dollar or the Masicha or the Tanya. So, and the Rebbe said that in general, the day of Tzaddik is, like we said before, is the day of bracha, but by the Rebbetzin, it's Chof Beis. Chof Beis, these 2 letters, if you reverse the order, it becomes Beis Chof, that spells B'chof. And B'cha is the beginning of a pasuk, B'cha Yivarech Yisrael. It's a day of incredible brachas. And especially those who had the merit of Yudah to go to the actual place of the Rebbetzin and to be close by and to say Tillim there and we ask for whatever you needed, there's no doubt that it's a day of tremendous bracha. And but what I want to bring out, if we saw these changes, that when the Rebbetzin, with the Rebbetzин's absence, there was so many. I mean, the Rebbe, by the way, hardly changed. Whoever was here by the Rebbe in 1950 came again in 1960 and came again in 1970 and again in 1980. Pretty much saw the same thing. You watched the Rebbe daven. The way he davened was the same. The way he did Shmon Esrei was the same. The way he did Lulav and Esrog was the same. Everything the Rebbe did was very, very with a seder, and everything was pretty much the same. You hardly saw it. The nuances were the same. The Rebbe should make such major, major changes mean that something majorly changed spiritually. And of course, we have to understand this in a positive way, that we reached a certain point, something was completed, and whatever was done before wasn't necessary. But because we entered a new era, the Rebbe called it a new era, so there were new things added in order to enhance and to develop and to give more power to that new era. So we understand that if with the Rebbetzин's absence, all these things changed. Obviously, when she was there physically, we can't imagine what her presence contributed to all the avodah that the Rebbe did. That's the one thing that comes out very clear. So I just want to say that this is it's a day of bracha, and all we can do is take advantage of it by adding in tzedakah and adding in tillin and doing all the things that you've already done, and we should be zeicher that all the brachas the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin give. You probably know the story, or maybe someone even mentioned it today, that someone brought something to the Rebbe's house. I think it was flowers for the Rebbetzin, and they asked that the Rebbe should give a bracha. The Rebbe said, you can speak to the Rebbetzin, she can also give a bracha. And it's also interesting that the Rebbetzин's birthday is on the 25th day of Adar, coming up. And when the Rebbe spoke about that day, the Rebbe said the same thing, that Chof Hey is the beginning of another pasuk. This is how you should bless the Jewish people. So clearly the Rebbetzin is connected to blessing, and she's a source of blessing. I'm very fortunate that we have a connection to her, and everybody should take advantage of their blessings to grow in Ruchnius, and you should be experiencing blessings and all the good things your heart desires, Begashmias. Any questions? Yeah.
Does there anything to do with Macron? Is there any stories or connections?
But the connection is that years ago, the girls in Macron went to the Rebbetzin twice a year. Once was, they did two projects. One was on the Rebbetzин's anniversary, the Rebbetzin anniversary, 14th of Kislev. The girls did something. Either they made a cake. One year they made an album of all the pictures of all the girls, and when you did, we draw lots. Who would be the one to go to the Rebbetzin? Two girls went to the Rebbetzin. And the other time was on Purim to bring Shalach Manos. That was the connection. And
in that book that in the back of the interview with one of our own students, asked to see the Rebbetzin and the Rebbetzin.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said after Fakir Shvat, the Rashi, certain things stop with the Rashi Sifat. So it wasn't every week that it was people on Rashi. It was just when the Rebbe Farbrengen on Shabbos.
Right. The Farbrengen, and especially on Shabbos, it was the Rashi Sifat. Yeah. It's interesting that, yeah.
But this is significant. To bring the rocks to the
Right. The truth is, I remember hearing a reason. It's thing that I don't remember right now. I think it says something to do with it's letting the person know that somebody making the indication that somebody was here, that people were here, but I'm not sure the whole explanation. Maybe somebody here knows.
We're gonna like to lay down, like,
Oh, welcome back. What? So way down.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard like, cause usually people like, other people bring flowers, but like the flowers die and the rock stays. It doesn't change, like when you put it there, there's some.
Something which is there forever. Interest important. Yeah. Could be. No, what I want to say is that a year earlier, it's interesting, it was a year, almost exactly a year earlier, it was Purim, a year before Shvat. The Rebbe said that people aren't paying attention, but the Farbrengens are very different than what they used to be. And then he spelled it out and said, I don't mean what they used to be in previous generations. I mean what they used to be even now, but earlier. Meaning to say, the Rebbe speaking about his own Farbrengens, that it's totally different than what it used to be. And basically the answer was because now the Farbrengens are focusing mainly and exclusively on Mashiach. It's a different kind of Farbrengen. At that time, no one really noticed that much that the Farbrengen was really, there was such a huge shift. But a year later, we clearly saw a huge shift. It was not Rashi, not Rambam. The Rebbe had a Seder. Every Farbrengen had a certain order. It was the same order. Maimer, Rashi, Rambam. Everyone knew what's coming. And after that, it changed. And the focus of every Farbrengen was really all about Mashiach. Because we're getting closer. And the emphasis on Mashiach just became much more intense and much more pronounced. I hope I'm not going to lose my cookies, that pink one. Yeah. That's another reason why it's pink, so we can find it. Yeah. The red thing? It's a red pen.
Yes.
Probably I couldn't find another pen, so I grabbed the red pen. It's actually my wife's. Yeah, I wrote it. It's her name, but I wrote it. Yeah. Yeah, Mrs. Cohn.
I just wanted to mention something that I feel connection with the Robinson also with my own. And that is that there was a woman by the name of Vera Galperin who was the cook for many, many years. She was the first cook at the dorm. She actually came to the dorm even before Mrs. Johnson was the dorm mother for 38 years. And when she came, she had been like a childhood friend of Robinson Kaimishka. And when she came to America, I guess in the 70s from Malta, for Ukraine, I'm not sure which one it was. When she came with her husband was no longer alive, and she came with two children. And she went to visit Robinson Kaimishka, and Robinson Kaimishka invited her to go into the big Rebbe's apartment. The Rebbe had already passed away, and Robinson had also passed away. And she invited her to go into the big Rebbe's apartment and to take anything that she needed for her home, pillows, pots, silverware, anything. And she took a number of items. Afterwards, I don't remember if it was the Robinson Kaimishka or the Rebbe that asked if she could like not to, the big enough pots, et cetera, et cetera. But she never used the things that she took. But what did happen was that after Mrs. Galvin passed away, we made a gathering at the dorm. And her son, who had never married and lived with her, was so grateful for that. He gave a tablecloth that Rebbitzin, that his mother, Mrs. Galprin, had taken from had been given, from the Rebbe's apartment. And it was a huge tablecloth that had the initials ND or maybe ND, I don't remember. But it was Rebbetzin Hamidin's tablecloth, and gave it to us as a like a token of thanks. And Mrs. Johnsburg had it cut into 96 pieces, small pieces, and a long cloth lace. She brought Mrs. Johnsburg like many different samples of lace, because Mrs. Johnsburg was always very, very particular. And, this alum, Shalom Sturba, took all, like, cut it into 96 pieces and put lace around each piece. And then the students sat here, only the students, the staff was not allowed. The dorm houses up were not allowed, it was for the students. Gave it to all of the students that year that were in the dorm, and continued to give it to all of the students, until there were none left. So, so kind of like a connection with this woman, because the Galfrin, who was a cook and had been a childhood friend of, and that's actually how, I think that's actually how Laura Pinta, or maybe, Connorton and Connor, Rothschild got into meet with her, so how much it was through Mr. Galfrin.
Really? Yeah.
Did you ever meet her?
Yeah,
How
That-
many times?
no, I had to meet with someone else, and he was in Revitz's house. I went there, I saw the Revitzin, she said hello, but there's no conversation.
Was it the Rabbi? Was that?
Rebbe wasn't there. Right?
Somebody else.
The Revitzin would come every day to 770. As you know, the Revitzin was she was always sort of out of the spotlight. She'd come every day to 770 to visit her mother, and then later to visit her sister, who lived on the third floor on 770. 770 has a elevator, but instead of going through the main door to the elevator, she used to go down to the basement. And no one should notice her. Take the elevator to the basement, and that's so. Sometimes we would see her going to 770 when I was in yeshiva. We would see her coming. Okay. You're welcome. Anybody going straight to the door? That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, I was like, I had an interview with law school for like, it's in the administrative process, so I had to do a Zoom interview.
They accepted you already or what?
So it's so like, the answer, I have to interview